Hello and welcome to this episode of Culture in Action. I'm Luke, CEO of Mo, and today I'm thrilled to be joined by somebody I've had the pleasure to work with many times before, Alex Goodanew of OVO Energy. Alex is the employee engagement manager for one of their large operational teams. The energy company has been challenging traditional players for the past 15 years, and OVO has a really innovative approach to most of the things that they do. They've won multiple awards for their culture, their sense of belonging, and for overall their organisational workplace. Today, we're going to dive deep into exactly how they've achieved some of those amazing accolades. In this conversation, Alex is going to talk to you about how OVO brought to life Agile, which is traditionally used in technology companies like Mo, into their operational and customer service teams and the real-world impact of some of those things, not just on their processes, but on their people and their performance. Let's dive in. Alex, it's an absolute delight to be speaking to you again. We've spent lots and lots of time together. So I know you very well now, it feels like. But for everyone else, it would be lovely if you don't mind just introducing you and a little bit about OVO.
Sure thing, Luke. Yeah, pleasure to be on a call with you again. We've had a great working relationship for the last few years. So pleased to keep that going. I'm Alex Goodanew. I work as the employee engagement manager for our operational teams in OVO. OVO is an energy retail business. We came in as a challenger company 15 years ago, trying to challenge the big six, doing energy differently and helping customers to decarbonise their homes.
Cool. And I love having you on these because OVO tends to push the boundaries. And I know you've won a whole bunch of awards for your culture. And that's exactly what we want to explore today. It's like not theoretically what's culture, but practically, like how do you make interventions, especially in customer service orientated teams like yours with a heavy operational focus? How do you intentionally lead change to impact your people, your processes, and ultimately your performance? And one that I know very well, because I've run a technology company, is Agile, but it's probably less familiar to anybody that would think about energy and operations. So do you mind just telling us a little bit about how and why you adopted Agile at OVO?
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess firstly, sort of what is Agile for those that don't know? And Agile is a way of working within guidelines, but without boundaries in a conceptual sense. So it focuses a lot on customer satisfaction, which is of course crucial, adaptability and continuous improvement as well. So historically, it was used as software engineer teams. And so then applying it to a company like OVO, which is a big retail business, is a new approach to take. But for us, it was the right one. OVO has always been a fast-moving pace, evolving pace. It's not a static business. You don't come here to work the same process for 20 years. If you come and work for OVO, you're going to be constantly challenged to drive improvement. And that works. The same principles were applied to the operation teams as it were to our tech teams. And so it made sense then to try and bring in a model like Agile to really formalize that and bring structure to that way of working and mentality.
Okay, got it. And then because I know it from a tech perspective and product, our product teams and technology teams use Agile methodologies and sprints and retros and so on. How does it adapt or change in a more service orientated operational environment like yours?
Yeah, good question. I guess, so because we sort of that back office operation, for us, it's still process, sort of your working processes, but the rituals can stay the same, but the principles still align to that. So whether it's, daily stand-ups, your fortnightly sprints, your end of sprint retros or anything like that, all those rituals that exist are still helpful to operate within an operational team, particularly when you think that first point is around customer satisfaction, is, one of the key drivers of Agile. Surely nowhere is it more relevant than in your frontline teams, your customer impacting teams, whether that's front office, your field, or your back office operations. Although we don't contact customers directly, every piece of, every account we're working, it's the customer that's behind that. It's the customer's experience we're trying to improve. So it's trying to bring that element to the forefront and then know that we work on a constant approach of trying to challenge how we're doing things and how we can improve it so that we offer a better experience for the customer.
Yeah. At the heart of it is how do you collaborate more effectively, right? And it gives you a bunch of frameworks to help do that. It'd be really interesting to you're 2 years into the journey now. So when you look at adoption and you start with I came to your event actually and talked as you were launching it to some of your teams and the leaders there, to look at how do you really catalyze the change? Like, what's the moment of transition? And now you're 2 years in, like, can you think back about like what some of the key steps that you went through or some of the barriers that you might have faced? Because the heart of it is bringing about change in the organization, right?
Absolutely. And so the same principles, I think, apply in any change that you're driving. It's a lot about buy-in. You need to get buy-in, but that has to start with your people leaders. You need to get them on board and onto the journey, really clear and understanding what it is, why you're doing it, how it looks. And once you get that message on board and bought in through that population, that's when you can then sort of roll it out more broadly. So yeah, we kicked off with a big event for all of our people leaders within the operational space. We got you along as well as a guest speaker, always grateful for that. But to really set the stall out of what Agile is and how it looks, some of the core principles, because we need them to lead by that example. So we're talking things like developing psychological safety, which the people leader, you're really responsible for creating that space, particularly from senior down. We talk about devolved leadership. And that's a change to how you operate as a people leader and how you are comfortable with devolving that leadership and empowering others to take ownership, failing fast and iterative working, all these sorts of characteristics. They are a shift to how we maybe work normally. And so we put a lot of time into getting our people leaders on board. And from there, we could then roll these concepts out to our wider teams. And then in the rollout across the teams, it's really about embracing the Agile principles to roll Agile, because, Agile's about that change and improvement. That's what you're doing here.
And forever evolves.
Yeah. So it's, not trying to get it perfect first time, leaning into it, knowing that let's just get the ball rolling and we can iterate as we go. And by the messaging complementing the action, I think that's what helped it to be quite successful, really clear on that messaging. And then you see that, we're working through this. It's, I don't know how to describe it, but you know what I mean? Like the principles fit what you're doing at the time.
It's like a morphing object, right, of the way that you think about the process. So as a consequence, it can't really be wrong because it will always be more right by design.
Yes.
And therefore it can help fit the context more effectively. And the barriers faced and how you use things like retros to eke out, like, what are some of the core problems with an operations team adopting these new ways of working? Like, what are the things that people were shouting loudest about? Like, what got in the way of this really flourishing, like I suspect it is now?
Yeah, I guess it's just that, anything new like this, because it is kind of big change in terms of the way that we're operating, like the rhythms and the rituals that you're trying to embed. We had a fair bit around in the retros, people then having constructive conversations, challenging. You work Agile to create high-performing teams to provide a better product for your customers. I've run sort of sessions since, which is trying to understanding these elements we aren't quite getting right, which is the psychological safety element. It's such a hard one to really nail down because we've got amazing culture here at OVO. People are just a bit too nice. No one wants to hurt anyone's feelings, and that's great. But what it means is that then that challenging in the right way was something that we weren't great at either. So that's a big thing we've identified here, and helping people to understand that challenging your colleagues is a positive thing. It's a productive thing, as long as we make sure we do it in the right way and we sort of work through what that looks like. But then it's so important because that helps you to call out where we're not doing things right, constantly challenging to be better. And it's not that you're challenging the individual, you're just challenging the approach, as we always should. What more can we do?
Yeah.
How better could we do that? And that's how you develop high performance within your teams, and a culture where you never rest, never think, brilliant, we're done, that's perfect. What more can we do?
Yeah, it's never personal, right? It's always about adherence to the process and the rituals and the frameworks that give you, I guess, just the drumbeat to how you communicate, how you align, how you give feedback to each other. It would be useful to explore that a little bit about how you found the team's like ways of working and their communication patterns evolve, because some of these are quite brutal adjustments, right? All of a sudden you have a daily stand-up. So how did you find that those kind of communication patterns changed as a consequence of some of the rituals? The good and the bad.
Yeah, well, it brought so much more structure into the way that we operate, but the way that we communicate too. And particularly in the hybrid world that we're working in now, it really complemented it. Because you're having these daily stand-ups, before people would ask about wanting to have just miss that interaction with people and wanting to have a catch-up. But now you've got a real purpose to doing that. So you're having those, daily interactions at the start of each day. but also what you're doing is you're setting real clear focus and guidance. So that communication has real value and meaning to it. And that's one of the real positives we've seen from this. Your daily stand-ups, then your sort of sprint reviews fortnightly, and your playbacks monthly or quarterly, like the retros that you do at the end, all of this collaborative and communicative work. And the other real value of it is that it means everybody's really kept in the loop about what each other are doing. And that's one of the big things that, again, we struggled with previously, was getting people to care as much about and understanding why it's important to know what other people are doing. Because when you do, you're able to identify crossovers, reduce duplication, but on top of that, identify opportunities for collaboration and for improvement, which we're still exploring and we're still improving at. And there's definitely still a lot of improvement to go. When you then scale up, as you can do that within team, but how do you do that within department? Or how do you do that cross function or cross functionally? So that's something we are continuing to improve on as part of that classic Agile iteration.
Yeah, nice. And you've now got 2 years worth of learning of impact. Can you talk to us just a little bit about that? Like, how has it impacted both the customer outcomes that this was all centered around, but maybe also the team's performance, their engagement, and the culture of the organization now?
Yeah, I mean, from a customer perspective, as you say, fundamentally, that's always the driver, right? That's what we're here, we're here to deliver the best service we can for our customers. And it's always been a really important part of OVO, but we went through a challenging transitional period through the acquisition of SSC. And through that change, of course, standards have dropped slightly. And so this has really helped us to refocus, to realign on that journey. And consistently now, our metrics are moving in the right direction. Our volumes of complaints coming down significantly. Our customer satisfaction scores heading up in the right direction. It's one of our top 3 sort of objectives, but probably the top objective, right? And we're seeing consistent positive movement in all of our metrics in that way, particularly over the last, I'd say 6 to 12 months. There's going to be that embedding period. You're not going to see the results immediately, but you stick with the process, you work through the situations, and now we're really starting to see the fruits of that, which is great. And so, so that's it from a sort of a customer perspective. From a people perspective, from our employees, the Peakon scores really reflect the impact that sort of thing is having. So engagement, which I think is a key one. That's the marker. You got to get that right to get everything else moving in the right direction. And that moved from 6.9 to 8 on our Peakon score. Okay. So that's out of a score of 10. And then our peer relationships held at 8.8. We're proud of where they were. That's always been OVO sort of real USP, as it were, is the amazing sort of culture and relationships we have here. But then we use tooling to help sort of drive some of this behavior as well. And so we've seen positive movements in recognition, which went from 7.9 up to 8.5, and from reward from 7.1 up to 7.92.
Okay, nice. So you're seeing pretty much across the board all results in terms of business outcomes and in terms of employee engagement. I guess performance is a proxy to your customer results going up too. Absolutely. They're all trending in the positive direction. And at the heart of that seems to be these enhanced ways of working that you and I know as rituals. So it'd be great to just dig into those a little bit, if you don't mind, and get a sense of what are those. I often think of like team habits, rituals, and routines as the foundation to your culture, because it just becomes the way we do things around here, which is often how people describe culture. It would be good to get a sense of those like golden rituals, the ones that have to happen, that you almost couldn't live without now. Have you got any of those that either from the Agile kind of methodology and framework, or some rituals that now you really must keep come hell or high water?
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, I mean, in the Agile framework, it's really sort of black and white, right? It's the daily stand-ups, your fortnightly sprints, and your quarterly retros. Like those have to stay in place to really make sure that way of working is effective. Consistency, I believe, is one of the most important things for an effective employee experience as well. Really delivering a consistent experience so that people know what to expect. And as you say, it's part of the behavior. It's just how we do things. And that's how you get great results. And one of the changes that we brought in that have embedded well is utilizing a boost to help drive our reward and recognition strategy. So that on a weekly basis, we are calling for that engagement in peer-to-peer recognition and top-down reward in a way that really focuses around the work that our people are doing and the way that they're collaborating and supporting each other and helping each other, building that culture that we're trying to drive. and using this boost ritual on a weekly basis to then promote, facilitate and reward that behavior.
Cool. And what do you call it? What is the ritual named?
Well, so for each department, they've got their own.
Oh, they've got their own. Okay,
tell
me a little bit about the language then and how that fits. Because I often find language is a really underestimated tie to what feels cultural, because a lot of it's about identity.
Yeah.
That sense of attachment to we do these things our way. And it's a variant on the same thing, which is how do you boost visibility and how do you enhance communication and how do you get the feedback there? But could you give us some really practical examples of how teams went about even naming what they are and what some of them are called?
Yeah, so I mean, I'm a sucker for alliteration. I just am. So it's around, and the identity piece is I think a really important one. You've got to break down the team insular identity and really try and connect people up to at least their departmental identity, and really make sure that they understand how they fit in that bigger picture, because then you're able to tie that into the wider function or business. So it's about trying to get them to really connect with their identity as a department, not just a team. And so taking the sort of departmental names and then whatever positive sort of language you want to use associated to do that. So just for example, I'm in the strategy and delivery team. So it's the strategy and delivery superstars. Nice and simple, right? It doesn't have to be, but what I like is that the platform we use gives us the option to be creative with it. And don't get me wrong, you're making your 6th or your 7th different one because there's a lot of departments to look after. And it gets a bit challenging. You're trying to think, God, how can I be creative and come up with something new still? But thankfully, working with the HODs and the senior management team, we did so. I mean, definitely there's a different approach. Put it out to your people and get them to come up with the names. But we took this one and tried to keep a level of consistency across the board too.
Cool. Really nice. You talked right at the head of the call about using technology as an enabler to help you. And this feels like a really good example of just that. Can you walk us through, in practice, what that really looks like then from a rhythm standpoint for the team?
Certainly, yeah. I just remembered as well, high fives and good vibes. That's another one.
That one.
I thought you might.
I'm a fan of that one.
She's a good manager. She's more creative than I. So the kind of what the rituals look like. So we have a kind of call to action at the start of each week on a Monday morning. It goes out to everybody within that department. And it's asking them over the course of the week to make sure they take the opportunity, get onto the platform and call out your colleagues, recognize your colleagues, those that you've collaborated with and helped you deliver, those who have supported you when you've had troubles with it, basically sort of enablers, people that have helped you enable to deliver against what your objectives are, your sprint goals. So it works in that sort of weekly ritual, but it kind of aligns to your sprints really. And it's keeping you connected to what is it I'm working on this week? What is it, through this sprint? What am I here to deliver? And then who has helped to act as an enabler for that? And then I can use this as a platform to recognize them and call that out. And, the main thing we've really tried to drive a culture of recognition, of positive interactions between colleagues. And this boost is trying to do that. But at the same time, it helps to showcase the way that they've helped you and what it is you've been working on. So again, it helps others to see what you're working on. Just again, improves that visibility of what everyone's doing, and helps you to always keep in focus what you're here to do and what you're trying to achieve as well. So as many kind of reminders and triggers that you can create as possible. I think repetition, I'm learning more and more, is invaluable. You can never say anything too much. You can never remind people too much about stuff. And this is a good way to subtly do that whilst then really engaging in how they're delivering and who's helping them do that. And then we add a reward element to it because we really like to incentivize the right behavior, right? So at the end of each week as well, we then, of those that are called out and recognized on this boost, the senior leader in that area can then go on and choose those that have been recognized or those that have done good recognition and reward them for it a little bit.
Cool. So you've got these core Agile rituals that are driving the focus on the work that needs to be done and the goals. And then in order to sustain a positive environment and really build on the people elements of collaboration, you've got high fives and good vibes, or the superstars. You've used boost a lot. I know what a boost is. Anyone that's listening, what on earth is a boost? Do you want to just give a quick 30 seconds on this is how a boost fits into our life and what it is for you?
Sure thing. Yeah. So Boost is a functionality on the Mo platform, which is a reward and recognition platform that we use across our function. And yeah, the boost is just a trigger. It happens, set up by the leader of that area. And it runs automatically whenever you sort of set it to. So we set it for once a week. And is that call to action to that whole population to get them to go on and recognize their colleagues. And that information, it pulls it into a sub feed, which is one of the features we really, really like about it, because it helps to hone in that activity that's most relevant to your closest population, that department that you sit under. And you can see all the positive actions and work that people are doing, and I guess the positive behaviors of people supporting, collaborating with each other, and that's recognized. And then people can comment, they could interact with it. And it's been a tool that's really helped us to drive the right kind of culture and the right environment that we wanted here at OVO. I would say
amazing.
It was an evolution. Historically, we got Mo as a platform to help meet a lot of my needs from a kind of reward and recognition perspective. And we initially were using it for a peer-to-peer reward and recognition scheme that we ran. And we ran that for a few years. But as time moved on and we evolved to this agile way of working, we then were able to shift and adapt how we used it. So again, it's always challenging. What more can we do? And it was looking at Mo and thinking, what more can we do with this platform? How can we get more value out of it? And so, with the boost functionality, we thought, well, we can use this to really align those rituals. And rather than it being a scheme that runs over the course of a month, a bit kind of loose and free and that sort of thing, and with it relying on everybody to do the rewarding side of it too, we thought we can bring some real good framework to it and structure to it, embedded into sort of a way of working that we're launching, an additional ritual that complements the other rituals that we have as part of Agile. Yeah. And then we move to this top-down rewarding side of things. But again, we know that although the peer-to-peer rewarding scheme was a great and innovative scheme, the more impactful rewarding is those that come top-down. That because it feels like that recognition really from your manager. There's more senior people. It has more weight to it. So we took the shift there to move to that. But because of the way that the boost works with that automated trigger and the real consistent frequency to it, it meant that it made our managers engaging with it a much easier process rather than this really
they're served
unstable.
Up, right? With here's all the good stuff that's happening. Which of this stuff do you think is standout? There you go, reward it. Nice and simple. Makes a big difference.
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah, nice. Okay, cool. Very cool. And I think you've talked a little bit to one of the areas that I love about OVO and working with you is that you're always really intentional about the changes in behavior that you want to try and create, whether it's progressive and the adoption of Agile or seeing the benefit of shaping habits, rituals, routines in the way that people work to create that consistent employee experience like we just talked about with the recognition one. Mm. You've touched on how that drives impact on the results that you care about, but I thought it would be useful to just post-adoption of Agile and some of these enabling rituals around recognition and the bits that you needed to drive improvement on and clearly have on your PCOM results. Have you got any other snippets around the impact that these things have generated on engagement or retention or maybe even performance?
Yeah, I think from a performance perspective, I think that's something that's really clear. When you have the right culture, the right mentality to it, performance is sort of it's almost a byproduct of that. I think it's what you get your house in order, and what is your house is your people. So you get that right, and you get the culture where, particularly then, through Agile, that psychological safety that you build in, and a culture of recognition, celebrating each other, knowing that behaviors like collaboration are what we praise here, supporting each other, helping each other to do better and to succeed is the culture that we want to nurture and that we recognize. Establishing that, then as a result, you see that come through in the processes and the performance of our people. And so to the adaptability to change, that is something that a lot of businesses struggle with, and it's a big thing, and it takes so much, I guess, additional support and time to navigate through. But with OVO, we are fast paced and change is the constant here. But by getting those other things in line, which working Agile has helped us to do, and having the right tooling and building the right cultures has helped us to do, it means that resilience is in place, and that what's the word? Working with it rather than fighting against it, because you understand it, you understand the groove of it, and you understand the benefit of it, because you understand as well the purpose of it. the outcome and the way that it can improve process and improve performance.
Yeah, I'm intrigued how those outputs, the indicators of success, also inform the changes to behaviors that you want to drive, because it's a cycle, right? You try and change the behaviors and then you see it in the outcomes. That's a win. Then you want to change the outcomes, so you need to change the behaviors again. Like, how do you use the tools or the frameworks to inform how and where you intervene?
Cool. Yeah, it's a good question. It's a tough one, but I think what we utilize a lot is Peakon and the data that we get through that. So when you see these dips in certain metrics, it's a real indicator of what's shifting and where to dig in to understand why. And we try and keep communication up as best we can with our people. Been to a lot of like engagement summits recently. There's a lot of people, a lot of products out there trying to sell me a lot of stuff. And after I tell them about what we do, they don't have a lot more to say. It's a good sort of two-pronged approach with Peakon, looking at the data, identifying the areas that you can see we need to drive improvement there. That is an issue where we need to shift it. Working with our people though to understand what it is that they want to see to change that. And then that helping to then influence our approaches, our strategies. From a behavioral perspective, it's then utilizing the tooling that we have in which to do so. The platforms that we have like Mo and the rituals like Boosts help to really showcase that. So you call the boost what you want it to, right? You identify the behavior that you want to promote. And as I say, rather than calling out what's going wrong, it's all about really promoting and showcasing the good behaviors and reinforcing those. So tagline it is that, promote that out there and then reinforce that with the recognition and the rewarding to it.
Nice. Great. I'm going to go to one or two closing thoughts, if you don't mind. Mm-hmm. One is for teams that are obsessed about customer service and an operational leader that might be listening to this. What would your advice be if they want to drive a similar change that both increases engagement and performance and in turn customer outcomes?
Yeah.
Any simple advice for them?
I mean, like, looking at Agile, I'd say it's like lean into it. I'd say that fundamental piece about improving customer, experience, your roles, your operational or frontline or field teams, that's what you're doing day to day. And so why not explore how this new way of working can drive an improvement there. And it's not about getting it right first time. It's about being confident to fail, being confident to give it a go, knowing that in a psychologically safe environment, there's no judgment. It's not an environment of that. It's one of encouragement and a safe space to give everything a go. So you've got, I say the principles of it help to facilitate its engagement and rollout, and it will give you the impacts you're looking for in the right places.
So pick it and stick with it.
Yeah, make a plan, stick to it, just like it says in layer cake.
Yeah, indeed. And then maybe the very last question is, how do you see the role of leaders, technology, and these kind of processes like Agile fitting together in enabling sustainable change rather than something that's just a flash in the pan?
Yeah, so I think with sustainable change, it comes down to those rituals. It's about embedding those rituals so that it isn't, because too often, change is short-lived, and then it's the next thing, And as I say, we move at a constant change in OVO, but underneath that ways of working is what stays consistent and is allows us to operate fast-paced change, because fundamentally the way we're working is consistent. And it's leaders being really clear on that and leading by example, having the tooling, the technology to facilitate that. And then, the processes sort of have to follow that structure and that way of working. But I think sticking to the rituals, like that's one I think that I've been really quite clear on and tried to make it as clear as possible to our senior leadership team here, that consistency is fundamental to success and to buy-in.
Perfect. Let's end it there. Alex, it's been an absolute joy to have the conversation with you, and you are an absolute expert. So thank you ever so much, and I really appreciate your time.
And not at all, Luke. It's a pleasure as always. Good to see you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Culture in Action. If you found today's conversation valuable, we'd love if you follow us, rate us, or review the show. It really helps others find us. And if you're feeling inspired, share this episode with someone who's passionate about building a better workplace. We'll be back soon with more stories from people leaders putting culture into action. See you again next time.